Pipestone Veterinary Services. He is in charge of works on health and production, and he's a graduate of South Dakota State University and has a DBM from ISU. He graduated in 2019, so fairly recently, and he's been quite busy, and he's going to show some of the work that he's been, things he's been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Monsi. Can everyone hear me okay? All good. I see thumbs in the back. Good deal. Thanks for the invitation to join. Really, as Monsi said, we're 12 months into this, right? I remember Leman last year where we were talking about how are we going to do this and what's coming down the pipeline, right? There were a lot of questions on the economics of it. I'm going to go into just what we've finally got into practice for the first few months with some of our Prop 12 farms and show you what the production numbers of that are. So the beauty of going last is you've already heard some of the things I'm going to show you. Patricia did a very good job demonstrating a few things. There's a few things that we've got some differences on, but hopefully you're going to see a lot of similarities as well as a couple differences in what I'm going to show you here as well. So real quick, I'll just give you for those of you that don't know who Pipestone is, we're a veterinary clinic, and really I'm going to talk to you about our Pipestone management company. Here in the U.S., we manage about just north of 300,000 sows for independent family farmers, shareholders throughout numerous states. And I'll get into how some of those farms are set up as well, so you can see a little bit of that. But really, for the outline of this, we're going to talk about just gestation housing within our managed farms, right? What have we employed today, and how have we set up some of the new Prop 12 farms that we've gotten going over the last 6 months or so. We'll talk about pen design, just stanchion versus ESF pens. Patricio, he talked very much about ESF, and we do have some ESF farms. I'm going to show you just what our stanchion barns would kind of look like as well. We'll talk about Prop 12 implementations on what we've seen. And then we're going to get into probably the bread and butter of this, which is really going to be the production impacts that we've seen with Prop 12 and how that relates to what we've done for years in the past. So today, I said we're just north of 300,000 sows under our management company. But 172,000 of that are in crated gestation, right? And a lot of these would be older farms. We haven't built a full crated barn since, I believe 2015 was our last one, 15 or 16. So going on a few years ever since then, it's been all pen gestation. We've got 90,000 sows in pen gestation. That is not the Prop 12 barn. That is just OPG, pen gestation. And then today, we've got about 21,000 sows in a Prop 12 farm. Now, when I say that number, I'll dig into the details here a little later, but it's not a full 21,000 sows are Prop 12 compliant, okay? Within some of these farms, as I'll display later, we run a percentage of sows that would be ran as Prop 12 compliant, and while the other ones within that farm would be open pen gestation, okay? And I'll talk about the reasons why on that. So really, what do we run? The majority of our pen gestation farms would be a stanchion pen. Why do we like it? Well, it's pretty easy to run. We don't have really the maintenance costs. I can show someone that, hey, the feed line's not working. I can go fix that, and I know that all my sows get feed, right? ESF farms, there's a lot of advantages with the technology, especially in terms of body condition management and all that, right? I can tailor feeding to that individual sow. However, with technology, right, who likes to run computers? Well, they work great when they work great, but obviously you want to just take them all out when they don't work, right? So that's why we would use stanchions on a lot of our farms, is just the ease of using it. Not to say that we don't have some ESFs, and we do even have some new builds that would be ESF as well. We're just kind of dabbling in some different technologies within that. But really a stanchion pen, you could think of a crated barn almost, but I took the crates out. I still got a feed trough, still got, I'll water them in the trough or whatnot. and then it's just a pen, really what would be the back alley if you think of them, right? You just kind of combined it all into a pen, so you got a trough on either side. We run about 30 head per pen in our stanchion barn. Not to say that's right or wrong, right? That's just what we've kind of taken and ran with on it. And to go to this, right, just pen gestation in general, got to be very disciplined, and it was a very long learning process through it all. Like I said, 90% of our pen gestation would be a stanchion barn. Honestly, it's north of that even. It's probably closer to 95%. ESF, as I already said, high technology. Big benefit, though, is that I can tailor feeding to the sow, right? I don't have all the variation in sow body condition as I would in a stanchion pen. A stanchion pen, I set the feed boxes, and that's what they're all going to get, right? You're going to have more variation with the boss sows and all that. ESF, right, it's going to read the ear tag, and it's going to deliver a set amount of feed to that individual sow. Typically, we would run larger pens with those, and that's just due to the cost dilution of the ESF system, as well as those systems being able to handle more animals on a per station basis. So real quick, couple pictures just on a stanchion barn. I already mentioned that really think of them as crates, but without the backs, right? It's all just together in one pen. This would be an alley here, and then this would be another alley here, basically, right? And then these would be the feed stations. So I got another picture here. All it is, just like a sow crate, but without the sides and the backs, right? Very, very low tech. Versus an ESF, Patricio, we had seen that as well. This is a NEDAP system, just like what he had shown. And we've got a couple different variations of other ESF systems as well. We do have one farm that's a NEDAP farm, so yeah, pretty self-explanatory there. What we see on our pen gestation versus crated gestation, just on the performance numbers, right, kind of today. I threw this up there because we're going to compare it a little later to what our Prop 12 farms or those animals are showing. 5+ years ago, 7 years ago, when we started running pen gestation, it was how are we ever going to get to be at the level that we are on a crated farm? Well, through a lot of work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, we think we've gotten very close. You'll see we're kind of blessed with low sow mortality, and that's due to a lot of discipline and a lot of learning. But you do see a higher sow mortality in the pens, right? There's no surprise there. The pigs weaned per female, that gets reflected a little bit based on location and some age of farms. Like I said, the 2015 and before, they're really all crated gestation barns that were built. After that, newer builds have moved to more remote locations. So there's some disease impact on what these numbers are. They're just in more hog dense areas, so there's some PERS data within that data there. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here, right? Prop 12, what do we know? 24 square foot per sow in gestation, okay? This does not include farrowing. There were nothing put in place on farrowing. We just hope that the precedence doesn't get set within the courts, that it could eventually go that way. But the part that's more critical for us would be the confine for 6 hours within a 24-hour period. So the pen gestation barns that we have employed and ran, we would have gestation crates that we could put wean sows in, breed them in there. We'd hold them there for 30 days until post-preg check. Positive animals, we would move to the gestation pens, okay? We got very comfortable with that. This kind of changed that on how do we need to do this now, because they have to move into, from being weaned, they have to go right into a pen. We got to try and breed them in that pen, and then I'll show you on how we kind of set up our barns, but we are using a free access stall to breed them in, and then we move them out to a larger pen. So you're also fighting with the timing of stress and embryonic implantation that's occurring as well. And then also cannot be confined for more than 24 hours in a 30-day period. It restricts us to, they can really only be confined for the breeding process, and then outside of that, that's it. Already said no effect on the farrowing housing. So some challenges that we ran into, and these are very much in line with what the folks have been seeing over in Country View. Cost, right? And this is due to really an asset piece. We run, our business structure is a shareholder model concept. Well, shareholders that get a packing agreement to produce Prop 12 pigs, they already have their fixed assets of their barns that they don't want to reduce their flow. So then what happens? Well, then we either got to build more space to have the same amount of throughput on the farm, or what we've said is you have less utilized space on the sow farm if I truly cut my sow inventory. And there's also the cost of the decreased production, things like that, which we'll get to as well. Changes to our personnel routine. Routine is part of it. When I take labor personnel that they've trained and worked their whole time within breeding, heat checking, everything in a crated gestation barn, and now they're having to breed in pen gestation concept or free access stalls, right? It's a whole new routine they got to learn. It's also a more labor-intensive piece, just like Patricio hinted at earlier. So we do need to run additional 1 to 2 people in those farms as well. And then, as I already alluded to, how our previous pen gestation barns were set up, is we breed them and we allow pregnancy detection, early embryonic implementation, everything. When we're moving them, they're already confirmed pregnant, so we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about stress during embryo implantation. With Prop 12, we do, right? So what we would generally utilize is they get bred in their free access stalls, and then 48 to 72 hours, we're having to move them out into a larger pen. So we're cutting it close to when that stress period is for when implantation is actually occurring. Already hit on this a little bit on just the cost piece of it, right? I can reduce my inventory or I can build, right? Either way, they do get expensive. And then, as I already mentioned, we do utilize free access stalls today for the Prop 12 farms that we've gone into. And then basically they would come from the farrow house and wean right into those. We breed them in the free access stall, and then we're moving them out to the larger pens 2 to 3 days later. Not trying to be an equipment salesman. This is just one of the free access stalls that we put in our barns. You can see there's a gate here and a gate here. So basically the animals can go in, and this would be open, it's counterweighted. They would go in, they would hit this gate, and then it's counterweighted, so it goes back down and then it locks. Then if she wants to go back out, she backs into this, which unlocks it, and it counterweights back up again. So we've got 4 farms currently producing Prop 12 pigs. There's one more we've got on the way as well. That's getting the renovations done to do that. There's one farm that would be 100% Prop 12, and then there's 3 farms that are actually split inventories. This is due to the amount of pigs that the producers were able to sign commitments to for Prop 12. The benefit of this for actually evaluating Prop 12 effects on production is we're able to see in the same farm traditional open pen style or crated or Prop 12. So I've got that data here to show in a bit. Yeah, so or a certain percentage based on the number of animals that or the number of pigs needed that would be destined for Prop 12 markets. So Prop 12, they have to have 24 square feet from 6 months of age and older, so basically we started out with the gilts, and then if we have healthy animals, good feet and legs, all that after their first parity, we'll continue them into Prop 12, right? Really until we start seeing issues with those animals, then they could get pulled out because they're going into a hospital pen or something like that. So that's how we split it. Farms that do that split, it also allowed us to not need as much space for the entire farm, right? And then farms that do that split, we need to identify those animals that are raised on Prop 12 compliance versus just open pen, right? So the pigs that would be Prop 12, they would get an ear notch. Talked about this, so again, you really just target a certain percentage that you're trying to have. It's not only your gilts. Initially you start in where it can be all your gilt flow, and then depending on what percentage of the farm or of the throughput you need that are Prop 12 compliant, that's how you manage it based on your P1s, P2s, etc. Yeah, and here's where I get into it, right? Concerns on structure, lameness, anything like that of the animal. Then it basically, she'd get pulled out, she'd go into conventional gestation, and would be no longer eligible for Prop 12 then for the remainder of her life. We would run roughly 30 to 60%. Again, that target is based on the packer agreements, right? The number of animals that they need for that. If they don't have 100% of those pigs destined for Prop 12, we're not going to produce 100% of those pigs for Prop 12 just due to the cost, right? And then, as I said, we do need to track those animals. So the animals that would be Prop 12 compliant, those litters would get an ear notch.
How is that Prop 12 compliant? Like, is that part of the rules?
So the way the rules are wrote is just the animals themselves that are marketed, they need to come from mothers that were raised for 24 square foot of space. It doesn't distinguish that it's a farm itself. No, it's written by the animal. So, correct on that, on the lawyer side. That's at least how we're interpreting it, right?
There is a lot of problems with the rules and with clarity in the rules.
Yes.
Even, I've got real concerns with, with free access stalls, whether or not, not that California's gonna bring enforcement.
There are a lot of questions still to be answered on this.
Yes.
Free access stall. So the sow can choose to back out, but the rules don't allow, the law doesn't allow her to touch the sides of the enclosure. And she's touching the sides of the enclosure. Is California going to enforce that? Not at all. But remember I said with Prop 12, citizen groups can enforce it. So HSUS can enforce it. And so a lot of these things are, if it stands, now you know where they're going to target with their undercover cameras and, fraudulent employees.
Yep.
Shouldn't call them fraudulent, but when someone tells you they work for you and they work for someone else, that's borderline fraudulent.
And that's what everyone, right? That's been the biggest frustration with Prop 12 in general is just we don't have clarity, right? Here was the law. Okay, now you define it, right? And that's why the appeals court and everything like that put that in on, hey, you need to get clarity to this and how it can be implemented and enforced. Right here would be some of our Prop 12 production parameters. And like I said, the ones I'm showing here are split farms. So we have basically a traditional style, what we would call, where these animals are really just bred, raised as open pen gestation. And then we've got Prop 12 animals. And the table on the right is really the one where it breaks down the differences, right? So this is the difference of Prop 12 compared to the traditional open pen gestation that we would manage on the farms. So as we can see, we see an impact to conception rates and fair-win rates. Some impact to total born, kind of dependent on the farm a little bit, as you can see. There's one farm here that is actually about net neutral, if not a touch higher. And then this slide doesn't show it yet, but we also see a reduction on weaned pigs per sow. right? As we can see, we've got a lower total born coming in, so just how that works. So we range really 2.6 on one farm to 6.2% lower on the farrowing rate compared to what we did of the open pen gestation with moving to pens after they were confirmed pregnant. And then really about a half a pig lower on total born and live born both is kind of what we're seeing. And again, this data is still fairly early. We've been farrowing Prop 12 pigs for roughly 4 months now. So obviously there's a lot of changes on the routine implementation, all of that we're trying to do to make this work. So still very early, and you know, changes that we make in breeding, right, take 16 weeks before we see the results on it. So very early in the data set still. And then really just the total KPI, what we showed. So this would be our crated farms on the far left, open pen gestation in the middle, and then the Prop 12 sows on the right. So really the same numbers that I showed before with the addition of the pigs weaned per female. Like I said, it's about a half a pig reduction per litter on what we're seeing on our Prop 12 animals today. And, you know, I would attribute that to the added stress, movement, fighting within the pens during that critical implementation phase. So in summary, we built, I don't know if you want to call 7 years long or not, but we've built a decent history of pen gestation within Pipestone that it's taken a lot of effort to get where we've been on the open pen gestation, but we're fairly proud of where we've gotten to, considering when we first started, it was, how is this going to work, right? Any new challenge, they come with growing pains, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing now on Prop 12. And there's refinements that we're constantly doing, but it takes a lot of discipline to get where you need to be. As we already hit on, cost is a big piece of that. The implementation changes of the facility itself, as well as the personnel and the management challenges that come along with that of trying to recreate the production cycle that you were doing. And then quick summary on just the production impacts of it. We're seeing about a 3 to 4% dip in conception rate and farrow rates on farms that are Proposition 12 compliant. And obviously there was a range, you guys saw the range. And then roughly a half a pig less total born and pigs weaned per sow. That's all I have on this. Any questions?
And we do have time for questions, so. Dr. Tapp, I believe.
Who verifies your compliance?
Today it would be a third-party packer audits for that still. You know, legally, I don't believe they can truly verify that compliance yet, just due to not having a clear direction from the state of California. But that has been kind of pushed for on the docket, would be the third-party audits. Is there a question right here?
Very quick, how much the packers have to compensate producers? Give us a range of per pig basis.
Yeah, really, we've seen all in on costs, we're about probably $7 at least per pig extra to conform to Prop 12. That's kind of on the low end of it, so we got to be at least that to even break even on the hit on production. And that would come from building of any additional facilities itself, right, to just build space up. You've got about $3 in production impact just on less weaned pigs out the door, right? And then you've got interest costs and all that if you're doing expansion. So definitely need to, you could be north of the $10 range to really break even, but then also make it worth it of going through all this as well at this time.
Evan, nice job, nice presentation. Way to represent Southwest Minnesota and Russ Township. Yeah. Hey, on your traditional open pen gestation, you said you got them in 3 sows and roughly.
Yep.
What does that work out to be from a square footage standpoint?
Yeah, square footage, they're right at about 17 to 18, just depending if we have one out or not, but 17, 18 square foot.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
There was another question. Oh, there is one there and then another one up front, I believe.
Thank you. What do you use to identify the pigs downstream if the entire farm's not compliant?
Yep.
Do you flow them differently, or how do you utilize that to identify them?
That'd be the notch, and then those pigs, right, need to, when they get on the truck, they're loaded specifically within the pen, and then producers at the farm level would place them into certain pens as well. So try and keep them together, obviously, but yeah, how they're identified would be an ear notch.
Michael, I think let's take this question and then we'll give it to Mike.
Do you see gilt replacement? Do you have to increase that? Do you run a lower parity distribution?
Yeah. Overall, I'd say our parity distribution, our goal is fairly low, right? If we're able to do that. If we run disease challenges where we got closures, things like that, right? That gets to be out of our hands and they got to go up higher. But yeah, just to get our level of throughput that we have, as well as some of our lower sow mortality farms too, being able to properly choose the right animals to breed and keep in the herd, yeah, our replacement rates go up some.
I think there is one last question there. Yes, and then.
What mortality reasons do you see impacting that increase in sow mortality?
On a pen gestation farm?
Yeah.
Yeah, lameness and fighting, certainly. Lameness, you could argue, could be caused by the fighting, right? As they get going, they can create lameness. So euthanize lameness. We would just see some more sudden deads as well, and that's some of it, you could say, is the husbandry piece of it, of not being able to properly see or identify as you would within a crated barn, right? So a little bit of that could get missed, but really lameness is our #1 cause in our pen farms.
Okay, I think we'll leave it here. Thank you very much, Ivan. So.